Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I am Jordan Jones. We are back here today as Purdue is ranked number one in America after a dominant win over Florida State and surviving a bit of a scare versus Iowa. Now, they head out east for a pair of matchups with the number one target on their backs for the first time. Meanwhile, Jeff Brom and Purdue football are headed to Nashville for the Music City Bowl, where they will take on the Tennessee Volunteers. We'll deep dive into basketball, talk a little bit about that bowl game, and answer your questions here today. First, as always, follow the show on Twitter at BoilersBeyond. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Help spread the word about the show if you can. And as always, I don't say this enough, but if there's anything you want to hear more of, less of here on the podcast, just let me know. I always want to make sure that you all are getting what you want out of this show. So don't be a stranger. Shoot me a DM on Twitter. Let me know your thoughts, and we will go from there. But, last week Purdue comes in at number 2, feeling a little bit snubbed after Duke jumped them in the rankings. You'll remember Duke took down Gonzaga while Purdue took care of Omaha, and that was enough for Duke to jump Purdue, get to number 1 in the rankings. Purdue debuted at number 2 when they took on Florida State Tuesday night. Blowout. Purdue 93, Florida State 65. The game was certainly felt closer than the 28-point margin, but Purdue dominated this game. They are now 12-9 all-time in the Big Ten ACC Challenge. That is the best record of any Big Ten school, believe it or not. It is worth noting, Florida State, without 3 contributors in this game, they had 2 big guys out, as well as their point guard, who was dealing with a death in the family. That certainly didn't help Florida State, but it wouldn't have mattered in the end. Purdue rolled in this game, and we've got a ton of takeaways coming to talk about Purdue's 2 games this week. The one thing that was very, very encouraging in this game was, for the first time that I can remember this year, Sasha Stefanovic got in foul trouble early. He missed the majority of the first half, and Brandon Newman stepped up big time. He played very well. He knocked down shots at multiple levels. I think he got to the rim for the first time of the season. That is not his game. He is not a guy who likes to put the ball on the floor and go to the rim, but he had a few nice mid-range shots, really scored at all 3 levels. And that is something that can be really, really important for him. If he's able to get a little more comfortable taking the ball to the rack, that's a game changer for him. And he's a good 3-point shooter. No one questions that. His mid-range game is an asset, but getting the ball to the rack changes things for him big time. He played very well in place of Stefanovic, but Purdue winning this game by 28, pretty remarkable. Leonard Hamilton was very, very complimentary of Purdue after the game, called them Final Four caliber, said they're the most complete team he had seen in some time, and he pointed out the obvious that Jaden Ivey isn't going to be around for long. So Purdue gets done with that, and they're the talk of college basketball Twitter for that 2-hour time slot, and then everyone turns their attention to Columbus, where undefeated number 1 Duke takes on Ohio State, and Duke blew a double-digit lead in the second half. There's no other way to put that, really. Duke led, I think they led by double digits at halftime. I think they grew it a little bit in the second half, and then they couldn't hit a shot. They fell apart. Ohio State came back, got the win. E.J. Liddell was big for them, as always, in that game. So Purdue had the door open for them, where if they could take down Iowa, they would be the presumptive number one team in the country come the following AP poll. And it wasn't easy, but as Cliz once said, let's exhale, baby. Purdue 77, Iowa 70, a game that Iowa was without its best player in. Keegan Murray was ruled out. He'd been battling an ankle problem that he suffered in their Big Ten ACC Challenge game against Virginia. He certainly would have moved the needle in this game, but Purdue holds on, and they battled some serious turnover problems. They battled a Iowa press, and they held on. They did not play great, and they won a game. So that's always big. They're number one. Some takeaways from these two games, though. In both of the Florida State and Iowa games, Purdue was sloppy in their half-court offense. And that's something that's noteworthy. It didn't really hurt it didn't really hurt Purdue in that Florida State game, obviously, because they still scored 93 points. Purdue buried 12 three-pointers. They got out in transition some. They had a much easier time against Florida State, who really wasn't scoring the ball well, and they had turnover problems too. They didn't have great offensive possessions. But 13 turnovers for Purdue there. They could have easily had 20 in that Florida State game. And then against Iowa, it absolutely hurt Purdue. And while the story of that game was the press that we will get to here in a bit, a fair amount of these came in the half court. And Iowa's physical. And they're very weirdly physical with how they play defense by not really playing defense the way you're supposed to play defense. They just kind of hit you. But Purdue is careless with the ball. And we saw this in both games. And I was really surprised at how effective Iowa was at it, of really pressuring Purdue's guards on the perimeter with the ball. They made Purdue move the ball backwards when they were in their weaving at the top of the key and throwing the ball around the three-point line. They made Purdue move backwards, and that's something that Purdue struggled with. Their guards had to pass the ball well, and they didn't at times. They struggled to have some entry passes in a little bit. It made Purdue's centers come up to the elbow, to the top of the key, to come get the ball. And that throws Purdue out of what it wants to do a lot, because so many of their possessions, it's like 30%, end in a post-up. Well, you can't. It delays your post-up, and it really hurts the effectiveness when they're posting up as the shot clock's winding down. So, getting into the half-court offense took longer. You saw that with both teams' press. Florida State did a really nice job of delaying Purdue getting into their half-court offense. That may be where Iowa got it, because, Purdue wasn't getting into their half-court offense until there were 15 to 20 seconds left on the shot clock, rather than when they would love to with 22 on the shot clock. That makes a big difference. A few seconds there is significant. And it impacted Purdue trying to get the ball into the post. It impacted Purdue trying to get those open threes at the end of the shot clock that they so often get. Both teams, especially Iowa, were very physical with Zach Edey and Travion Williams in the post. And Zach Edey really struggled against Iowa with that. Had a few turnovers there. Didn't get comfortable at all. They made him take tough shots. They made him take rushed shots, And that was something I noticed with Travion Williams too, was they weren't letting Purdue's bigs get to the position they wanted to get to, and that was very effective for them. Purdue was able to hit a barrage of threes against Florida State to counteract that. They really weren't against Iowa, And that's kind of why you saw it get so close. Now, getting into what everyone was talking about Friday after the game, the big storyline from the Iowa game was the struggle Purdue had with Iowa's press. And for those of you that have been around for, a few years now, it's been a few years since the Purdue can't handle the press narrative was there. Welcome back. This was significantly a ghost of the Rick Mount night against Iowa from the 2015-16 season. Purdue blew a massive lead because of Iowa's press in that game. Later on that year, they almost blew a huge lead against Maryland with Dick Vitale in the building. They rallied, I don't know if they ever were losing in that game, but they about blew that one. Same reason, because of the press. That was a while ago. Tonight, Purdue led, not tonight. What am I talking about? Friday night, Purdue led by 19 points with about 10 minutes to go, and Iowa trimmed that all the way to 2. Iowa got hot a little bit. They were shooting the ball well towards the end, but Purdue was unable to get the ball across half court for a little bit. It felt like it was a 50-50 chance there for a little bit that Purdue would get it across half court. Eric Hunter, Isaiah Thompson struggled a little bit. Purdue just really, really was bad at breaking the press. And it's unique because Iowa's very good at that press. They will let you get the ball inbounds. They're not trying to deny the inbounds pass. And they're just a one-on-one press until you get across half court when they meet you with that trap. And you have to get the ball, you have to move the ball quickly to not let them set up that trap. And Purdue didn't recognize that very much in this game because they were lingering in the backcourt. And when they were able to get it across, a lot of times that pass was getting just across the timeline where Iowa has another defender there, basically. You can't go back. So that one really hurt Purdue there. You dealt with a few 10 counts. That's tough. There is at least try to make a play and turn the ball over, I guess. A 10 count really hurts you. Purdue's probably going to see some more of this moving forward. I don't know that you're going to see teams that are as equipped to take advantage of it because you kind of have to, that's got to be in your repertoire. You don't just throw in a press right before you play Purdue and deliver the results that Iowa did off of it. That's kind of a misconception there, but your off-ball guards have to be better. Isaiah Thompson banged his hip early on in the game. It was that play where he ends up going limp into the free throw line a little bit. He wasn't 100% in that second half. Eric Hunter didn't look great. He didn't look as comfortable as I might have thought for a senior out there. But you just can't wait in the backcourt. You have to move forward on that press. That's something that Purdue will see, and Purdue is certainly better because they went through that. Don't lose sight there. Yes, it's frustrating. I get it. But seeing that press made Purdue better. You can see when this team plays that it is a hyper-competitive group of players, and they want to win very badly. And during this week, in those 2 games, 2 players really stood out in that regard, Travion Williams and Mason Gillis. You've seen it all year with Travion Williams. It's been a pretty well-told story that he was an All-American last year who's not starting. And it's pretty impressive, to have the humility to accept that demoted role to some degree. Not that it's really a massive demotion. He's still getting plenty of playing time, but that says something about his character, that he's willing to take that role and still go out there and play hard and cheer hard when he's on the bench. He's always up cheering, dancing, celebrating. He's excited to be there. When he's on the court, he's been different this year. He isn't posting up on the low block as much as he has in the past. I don't know that that's the best thing for him. He's out on the perimeter trying to dribble more, trying to dribble himself into the post more. I think at times he needs to slow down a little bit in the post, but his effort on defense has been incredible, especially when he's being drawn away from the basket to guard guys 20 feet from the rim. He is playing incredibly hard there at a spot that isn't necessarily comfortable for him. That's big time. That's a star player who is really dying to win out there. Against Florida State, he was diving after a loose ball, knocked it off a Florida State player, forced a big turnover. That effort stuff from a guy who was an All-American, All-Big Ten last year, that's unheard of. That is incredible. If you watch some of the post-game press conferences, Williams has been very, very impressive. He is very well thought out. He is very much all about the team. He had some good perspective on the potential number one ranking. He's been impressive as can be this year. And how about Gillis in that Iowa game? He knocks down a pair of huge threes, but clearly his impact was on the glass. Late in the game, when things were starting to fall apart for Purdue, Travion Williams misses the front end of a 1-and-1, and Gillis goes flying in to force a jump ball to get Purdue the ball back. I have no idea, looking back on it, what happened on that next possession for Purdue, but that is awesome. That's an effort that you see from a player that just wants to win. And that effort and energy is something this team needs, because they don't need Mason Gillis to be a scorer. They need him to score in the capacity that he did against Iowa. He knocked down threes, and I don't think he missed a free throw. Perfect. That's all you can ask for. That is the definition of a player knowing his role and exceeding in it. And that's where Mason Gillis brings incredible value to this team. Now, a player who isn't necessarily much of a role player is Jaden Ivey, and he was excellent. And we saw two very different games from him this past week. Against Florida State, he came out and hit 3 early three-pointers. 4 of 6 from deep in that game. Against Iowa, he struggled from deep, but you saw his ability to get to the rim. There was the possession in the half court where he catches the ball on the right wing, goes in for what looks like it's going to be a right-handed layup, and throws down a dunk. You've never had an athlete at the guard position like him at Purdue. It is incredible. That is something we just simply have never seen. His three-point shooting is much improved from last year. It's still not the best part of his game. And getting to the rim is huge. He's unreal in the fast break. That's another area where Purdue's never had someone like him. Everyone's saying it. Everyone's right. This is the last you're going to see of him at Purdue, is this season. Enjoy it. He's special, and he cares a lot. There is no doubt that Jaden Ivey is incredibly bought in to this team's goals and getting to where this team wants to go. He wants to be the reason why they get to where they're getting. And one final thought here about Iowa. I kind of talked about this, but Iowa's defense gave Purdue problems because Iowa fouled the absolute you-know-what out of Purdue. The amount of unnecessary fouls in this game was incredible. They really hurt Iowa in the end because they had a couple guys they had the big guy fouled out. I think Chris Murray had a 3 or 4. I know, was it Tony Perkins had 3 at half? I mean, it was ridiculous. Most teams Purdue plays are going to have a little bit more legal of a defense, and that probably helps Purdue. But Iowa's physicality was absurd. In the NCAA tournament, when that whistle gets a little tighter, they probably would have fouled out their entire team. So just know that part of that was Iowa being ridiculous. Moving on, Purdue is number 1. The first AP poll came out in 1949, and for the first time in its history, Purdue sits atop the poll at number 1. Face value, this means nothing. It's December. It is December, what is today? December 6th? Yeah, December 6th as I'm recording this. It means nothing who's number 1 at this point in the season. But the symbol is awesome. You saw how excited Purdue people on Twitter were today. You saw a lot of Purdue basketball alums fired up. Even Carson Edwards tweeted about it. If you've seen how much Carson Edwards has tweeted about Purdue since he left, you know it's a big deal to get a tweet out of him about Purdue. So that is awesome. Getting that branding of Purdue out there is always great. You know, Purdue is a very good program. Purdue's had great success, but they haven't been number 1. They haven't been to a Final Four since 1980, and they've never won a national title. Those are 3 things you're looking to change this year if you're Purdue, and you got somewhere. It is a long season, but this is all you can do for now, is be number 1. You're there. That is a heck of a first step, and you couldn't ask to be anywhere else. And, you know, on December 6th. Now this week, you wear that number 1 target on your back for the first time. You go to Rutgers for your first true away game of the year. Not a good start to this season for Steve Peichel and Rutgers. Last year, during the regular season, they probably thought they were going to be a little better, but they got a win in the NCAA tournament. They drove Houston to the brink. But early on this year, with most of that team back, they lost Miles Johnson and Jacob Young to the portal. They got a good amount back. They've lost to Lafayette. They've lost to UMass. And their last time out, they lost by 35 over to Illinois. They've got familiar names on the roster. Ron Harper Jr., Cliff Omoruyi, Paul Mulcahy. Those were all starters for them last year. Geo Baker's there as well, but he's been injured of late. He missed the Illinois game. It doesn't sound like his hamstring is going to be ready to go for the Purdue game on Thursday. Obviously, you don't get injury reports that far in advance, but I'm not expecting Geo Baker to play against Purdue. Their offense has been abysmal. Purdue's defense hasn't been great. That'll be a good chance for Purdue's defense to show that they can bottle up a bad offense and really smother them. I think they scored like 51 against Illinois. I don't know that Purdue's going to hold them to 50, but keeping them down in a low point total range is big. It'll be interesting to see how Purdue comes out with that number 1 ranking. The one thing about Steve Peichel at Rutgers is they're going to play hard. They aren't that talented, but they're going to play hard. And part of winning a Big Ten championship, which is that's your goal for the regular season, you can't mess around in these games. The top teams in the conference tend to beat each other around, but you can't lose to the middle and bottom teams in the conference. So you can't come out with some sleepy performance at the rack on Thursday. I don't think Purdue will, but you've got to come out ready to roll. And then they stay out east to shoot up to Brooklyn and play NC State. It's a day-long event there at the Brooklyn Nets Arena. NC State's 6-2. They haven't shown a whole lot so far, though. They lost to Oklahoma State and Louisville, the 2 best teams they have played, and they needed 3 overtimes to get by Nebraska after a little fight they had going on there as well. Really weird stuff. They've played a bunch of mid-majors too. They play another really low major before they play Purdue. Look, it's a program that has dealt with some NCAA investigations. They are perennially in the middle of the pack of the ACC. They are the number 3 team in a state that has North Carolina and Duke. Their best player, just what I know about them, it's not much. Darion Sebron, 6'7" guard, averaging 20 and 10, but he's shooting 8% from 3. That will be Jaden Ivey. We'll see what he can do on him and if he can shut him down. That would be big for Jaden Ivey to show he can do that. Their starting center is Emmanuel Duwana's little brother, Ebenezer. Little Purdue connection there. And then Casey Morsell, solid player for them. He's a Virginia transfer. Pretty highly touted recruit at one point. But, seeing a team need 3 overtimes to beat Nebraska, I feel good about Purdue's chances here. It is in Brooklyn. It's the first time that Purdue will play in an NBA arena. Not that that is some significant thing, but take note of it because if Purdue does what they would like to do and what I think everyone else would like them to do, they're going to play in a lot of NBA arenas this year. All right, on to football. Purdue football headed back to Nashville. Music City Bowl, Purdue versus Tennessee. December 30th, 3 o'clock p.m. As you all remember, Purdue went to the Music City Bowl a few years ago, 2018. Game didn't go so well. Auburn ran through Purdue pretty easily like a hot knife through butter. Noteworthy, though, that was an 8-4 Auburn versus a 6-6 Purdue that needed to beat IU to go to a bowl game. And a Purdue team that lost to Eastern Michigan, gave up 40 to Missouri, Drew Lock. Very different matchup than what it is this year. Tennessee comes in 7-5. Josh Heupel's first season there, coming in from UCF after they fired the lovely Jeremy Pruitt. Once they made the quarterback switch after a few games, they were starting Joe Milton, the former Michigan quarterback who contributed to their lousy 2020. Once they moved on from him in favor of Hendon Hooker, the offense got much more explosive. They're up to 38 points a game on offense. This should be a pretty high-flying game, I think. I wouldn't bet the under. Purdue opened as favorites. Tennessee is now favored. I think there's been about 6 points of line movement in this one already. Money flying in on Tennessee. It's only the second time these schools have met. Purdue won the 1979 Bluebonnet Bowl over the Vols back in the Mark Herman days, I believe. Look, there's complaints out there. Purdue fans have a way of complaining about all sorts of stuff. Go look at the message boards if you haven't seen. But look, just enjoy it. I mean, Nashville's a great city. It's drivable for all of us that are in Indiana. It's a difficult game, sure. You play an SEC team. We know how the SEC is. If you're one of the people up north that doesn't believe that the SEC is better than the Big Ten, I don't really know what to tell you. The teams are better, but there's nothing you can do during the bowl selection process. And we have a question about that later I'm excited to get to. If you're going, it's going to be a blast. Broadway is so much fun. It was a lot of fun in 2018 when it was all black and gold down there the day before. I think it might be similar to that with Tennessee fans probably making a day trip of it. If you want to complain about bowl games, though, remember this. 2008 to 2016, Purdue went to 2 bowl games. One of them you went north to play Western Michigan. The other you went to Dallas with an interim coach to lose by like 40. Let's not lose sight there. And then you won 9 games in the following 4 years. So we'll have a full preview ready for you ahead of time. That way, on your drive down to Nashville, you've got something to listen to. But just a few thoughts. I think it's fine for Purdue. A few miscellaneous thoughts here before we answer questions. Very nice for the Big Ten to win the Big Ten ACC Challenge. The Gavitt games in the second week of the season were a disaster. Big Ten got smoked there. But until the Big Ten gets it done in March, after last year's shaky performance, to say the least, in the NCAA tournament, the Big Ten's going to have to do better than that this year to really get folks to buy in to them as the best conference in college basketball again. It's always good for the Big Ten to have a team in the playoff, that is the college football playoff. Michigan beat the living daylight out of Iowa 42-3. Iowa's not good. We knew that when Purdue went up there and spanked them. Pretty crazy that they were number 2 at one point. They didn't deserve to be on that field. But credit to Jim Harbaugh. The guy took a massive pay cut to stay at Michigan and try to finish what he started. He did it. He beat Ohio State. He won the Big Ten. And now he's in the playoff with a chance to do something that, Michigan hasn't done in a while. They haven't won a game like that in forever. It would be absolutely massive for that program if they could take down Georgia somehow. I don't think it'll happen, but regardless, good money for the Big Ten. Jack Plummer entered the transfer portal last week. Not a surprise in any way, shape, or form there. There will certainly be plenty of interest in him. Anytime you have a quarterback who has proven ability, it may be more of a game manager role, but Jack Plummer is a solid option for a team. There's going to be plenty of interest. It is interesting to me that he's staying with the team through the bowl game. Credit to him for wanting to see it through and not bailing right away. But now all eyes are on Aiden O'Connell and his decision, whether he will return to Purdue for the 2022 season or if he will move on in life. Jeff Brom did not give an answer there during his bowl game press conference on Sunday, where he also did confirm, to no one's surprise, David Bell and George Karlaftis are going to be entering the NFL draft. They will not return to Purdue for their senior seasons. Again, not surprising if this is news to you. Okay. Both these guys had fantastic careers at Purdue. Karlaftis is a surefire first rounder. David Bell, probably a first to second round guy from what I've seen. Brom did not give an answer as to whether these guys would play in the bowl game. He hinted that he would encourage them to play, did point out that he will support them whatever they decide, and obviously that he would understand if they didn't. You can't blame them if they decide to sit out. They have life-changing money coming their way in the NFL. I get it. I would love to see them play also, but, you look at just last year, De'Aaron King at Miami tore his ACL in the bowl game and just never was the same. Barely played this year even. So I don't know what they're going to do. But if they decide not to play, I don't think Purdue people should be upset in any way, shape, or form. And finally, the fun one. This was not very widely talked about, surprisingly, given the way coaching rumors tend to work. But if you're on Twitter or if you spend some time on the message boards, you probably saw the Louisville people were very ready to move on from Scott Satterfield and launch another campaign to bring Jeff Brom back to Louisville. There is a Twitter account out there that's called Bring Brom Home that just tweets Bring Brom Home to Louisville people all day. It sounds like Satterfield is at least getting one more year. It sounded like there was a big meeting between the AD and Satterfield. Now the AD might leave for Florida State. Everything around that program is a disaster. They hired Satterfield after Brom said no in 2018. That program had really deteriorated under Bobby Petrino. Shocker. But now it's not like the athletic department is in a great spot. Your AD is going to potentially leave for a job within your conference. The basketball program is a scandal-ridden disaster. You just had Chris Max suspended for extortion. I mean, you don't hear about extortion in college sports. Just nuts there. Football hasn't been nationally relevant since Lamar Jackson left. I know it's not that long ago, but it's not what they want. Ultimately, if Brom ever wants to go to Louisville and he does it, it's solely going to be because he wants to go lead his alma mater. And there's nothing wrong with that if he does. Purdue has invested in him in every way he could have possibly hoped. Raising the assistant pool, I think, is the next step there. I know it sounds like Ross-Ade is possibly, back in the talks for renovation. That's great. The progress that Ross-Ade Stadium has made from the winter of 2016 when he walked into Purdue with no lights on that stadium, a dilapidated video board, and the little north end zone scoreboard to now is night and day. And the coaches are better compensated. The indoor complex there off Northwestern Avenue is awesome. He has what he needs at Purdue. If he wants to leave, okay. But Purdue has done everything they can to make this as an appealing of a job as possible. Question time. All right, starting with football. We kind of got split 50-50 here. So a question about the bowl selection process, how Penn State goes to the Outback Bowl at 7-5. Obviously, Purdue, Minnesota, Wisconsin all had better records. The bowl directors have their choice. So when you see, like in a bowl lineup, that a bowl has the Big Ten number 3 and the ACC number 4, that means that they have the third choice of Big Ten schools that don't go to New Year's Six bowls, and the fourth choice of an ACC school that doesn't go to a New Year's Six bowl. Once the New Year's Six are selected, then it goes down that pecking order. So the Outback Bowl chose Penn State over other schools, over Purdue, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, notably. While records sometimes get followed straight through, they don't have to. So the Outback Bowl folks are thinking that Penn State will out-travel those other ones because it's a business. That's all this is at the end of the day for those bowl games. And they've got to be nervous with a possible expanded playoff of even diluting bowl games further. So they're trying to get their money in. I don't know whether Penn State will out-travel Wisconsin, Purdue, or Minnesota. I don't know that they won't. I have no idea. The bowl directors would know that better than I would. But that's how that happens. The record doesn't really matter all that much. A couple related questions here. Does Tennessee pose the same type of matchup we saw versus Auburn in 2018? How many NFL players are on Tennessee's team? Well, the same type of matchup. Both these teams are middle of the pack in their conferences. Middle of the pack SEC talent is far better than middle of the pack Big Ten talent. There's no doubt about that. If you don't believe me, 24/7 team talent composite. I'll say it over and over again. It's there. It's accurate data. Purdue is much better. I shouldn't say much better, but this Purdue team is better than the 2018 Purdue team was, and that Auburn team was better than what this Tennessee team is. So I don't, knock on wood, but I don't think Purdue's going to lose by 49 here. But Tennessee has the talent advantage, yeah. Purdue's going to have to score. It's no doubt about it. You're not going to get in a slugfest here. Tennessee's defense isn't great. So this could be some serious points here. It's never ideal to play an SEC school, though. You never know. sometimes whether they're going to want to be there in bowl season. At least that's their excuse a lot. But, Auburn did in 2018, and Tennessee will in this game, no doubt. They're pretty happy with their season they had under Heupel. There's going to be a lot of Tennessee fans that show out and fill up Nissan Stadium. I don't know about the number of NFL players. There's more on Tennessee's roster than there are Purdue, though. I don't know that they have first-round talent like Karlaftis and potentially Bell, but Tennessee's got a deeper roster, no doubt. With Bell, Karlaftis going pro, where does that leave Purdue next season? Will O'Connell return? What repercussions would that have on quarterback recruiting? Well, where does that leave Purdue? I think any outlook on 2022, you had to think that Bell and Karlaftis would both be gone. That is as simply as I can put that. I think any hope that they would return for their senior year might have been a little naive. But, you have to replace two elite talents. That's not great. You have a fairly favorable schedule. You have a more talented roster than, really this roster gets more talented every year for the most part. So that helps. These 15 bowl practices are big because even if Karlaftis and Bell are going to play in the bowl game, I don't think you're going to be throwing them out there to get hit a bunch all day. Just my thought there. So you can work in other guys, more reps for Milton Wright, for Brock Thompson, for, Abdur-Rahman Yassin and Mershawn Rice are out. But for Colin Sullivan, for Preston Terrell, for Deion Burks, who else am I forgetting there? Probably someone, but that's a deep receiver room. That's a lot of guys that are going to get more reps there. At defensive end, more reps for Jack Sullivan, more reps for Kydron Jenkins. DeMarcus Mitchell is going to be leaving, but you get the point. You have more opportunity. Joe Anderson as a defensive end there. So you have the opportunity to develop guys more. The bowl practices are big. Now, I think O'Connell's going to come back, but I have no inside scoop. That is simply me thinking I know what makes sense, and I could be wrong. In terms of recruiting, it doesn't change much. I mean, Brady Allen's going to sign next week regardless. I don't think your plan was ever to play a true freshman at quarterback, especially in a very complex offensive scheme that Jeff Brom runs. And then the 2023 commit, Ricky Collins, he won't be impacted by that. O'Connell would be gone before he would get on campus. We will see if Brian Kelly at LSU decides to go after Collins. The one thing I know is Louisiana kids have a tough time saying no to the purple and gold down there. And then had a question about recruiting in general. We'll have more on that after signing day next week. Still deciding if I want to do a signing day special episode or toss it into another one. Let me know your thoughts. Hit me up on Twitter for that. I could go either way there. But moving on to basketball, a couple questions about, handling the first true road game of the year. One of them specifically addressing the RAC. It's an interesting venue. It is not a Big Ten basketball venue by any means. It can be weird, though. I saw they've sold out like a dozen straight games there or something. So maybe it'll be sold out. I don't know. It'll be your first time playing in front of a true away crowd in 2 years. That's different. A lot of these players have not faced a true road crowd. The veteran nature of this team helps there. Travion Williams, Sasha Stefanovic, Eric Hunter, Isaiah Thompson, they've played in front of road crowds before. For the rest of the guys, you just got to keep your composure. Everyone is going to want a piece of number one. That's just how this works. Everyone's going to be ready to storm that court if they take down Purdue. That starts at Rutgers. You have to keep your composure. You can't let runs turn into, you can't let an 8-0 run turn into a 17-0 run. You can't let a 10-2 run turn into 21-7. You have to be solid there. There's going to be a bad stretch in the game. You're going to give up an 8-0 run. but you have to just be calm and be the more mature team. Down the line, where do you think Purdue trips up and gets their first loss? KenPom has Purdue favored in every game. That's not going to happen. Don't worry. I'm not saying that. Your trip to Michigan, January 11th, that's going to be a real challenge for you. I think that Michigan team is going to keep getting better. They're really talented. They're very young, but they're very talented. Before then, any game away from Mackey Arena, it's probably possible. I don't see Purdue losing at Mackey, really. It's been pretty impressive this year. January 17th at Illinois. That's a noon tip-off on Martin Luther King Day. That's going to be tough. That's a really good team. Team Purdue struggled with the last 2 years. And then January 20th at Indiana. I know it's been 9 in a row now. That team's playing hard. They are improved under Mike Woodson. I don't know that. Look, I don't think Purdue's going to be undefeated by that point even. That's a lot to ask. But past that week where you go to Illinois on a Monday, Indiana on a Thursday, I don't think Purdue's going to be unbeaten past those 2 games at the absolute latest. And, to cap it off, how long does Purdue keep the number 1 ranking? A few weeks. I don't think Purdue's going to give it away this week. You really hope not. That'd be a real bummer and a real buzzkill, but you're not going to keep it forever. You don't want to keep it forever. You don't want to go in the tournament unbeaten, not when you have the type of narrative around your tournament performance that Purdue does. So it's probably a good thing that you're going to lose eventually. That's all I have for you here today. Thank you for spending some time with me. Next week, we'll be right back here. 2 more games to break down. Rutgers, NC State from the East Coast. And we'll see what all has transpired since then in the world of Purdue athletics. Follow the show on Twitter at Boilers Beyond. More thoughts and insight there. Subscribe to the show so you don't miss that next episode. Have a great week, everybody. We will talk again next time.